Journalist Bilin Daud Tshiamiso of the eminent Center for Investigative Journalism, supported by the Pulitzer Center, bring you Dust, Disease and Despair, a story on how mining and tuberculosis are killing Basotho. For generations, Basotho men traveled to South Africa's gold mines, chasing wages, building fortunes they never shared. But many returned home with their lungs shattered, their bodies slowly shutting down, victims of silicosis, tuberculosis, and a compensation system that often leaves them behind. This is a story of South Africa's gold mining's long shadow and Lesotho's health system on its knees. Basotho men were the backbone of South Africa's gold mining boom. They descended into deep shafts, drilling, blasting, and breathing silica dust every day. Today, thousands cannot breathe without pain. Many have turned to the Tshiamiso Trust for compensation, and many died waiting. One of these ex-miners is Basotho, once a strong underground worker, now struggling for every breath.
Ka 2017 TV ya fihla ya ga ba se ba checka ba ga matshwafo ana ha wa sa senyehile haholo ka nnete hwaya ya mpheta hape ka 2023 TV ya le se ke hlaba ente ka nako ena ke se kopane le bona nako e ba fihla e le mo ke ntseng ke qetela TV ya ba re nke ka kenywa x-ray le motšhini mona o bitswelang ke qete ka ditaba tsa TV ke le ka emela nako eno ba ile ba ntetsetsa ka tla etsa ditaba tse hlokehang ha sale ke lebeletse ditaba tsa bona hore di tla tla ha o ka ba ha etsala letho go fitela ke letsetswa ka 2024 hape ke ba re nke ha sale ke tlile ntate ha ka ba hlotse ho etsala letho jwale tsona tsa bobedi hape a se ke tlile ke re na x-ray ya pele ha e hlahile ya ba ka nnete ke mona mo ba nqalang botjha hape le bona ya ba mbontsha hore x-ray ya ka e hlahisa mona ke sotheile mo ke tsebile ke na le x-ray e mpeng ya ba ka nnete e sale dintho e ba di ile ho fihlella ke mathile ke ntse ke matha Tshiamiso tokomane ke ene ko bontshitseng yona e bontshang hore ke check-uwe e fihla e haella mona ha o ka e sheba o tla e bona mona tokomane ena ntate ke ena ha ene ka soka mona o tsebe ho e bona.
Basotho's medical scans, reviewed by doctors, show scarring, distortion, and nodules, the unmistakable signs of silica dust eating away at his lungs. He suffers from multi-drug resistant TB, known as MDR-TB. Yet his BME, the benefit medical examination needed for him to access compensation, has still not translated into financial relief. Basotho's story is not rare. It is the rule, a fate of all gold miners. Far from Basotho's home, in another village in Lesotho's town of Maputo, lives Rabi Tshiamiso, 36 years underground, a lifetime of dust.
Ke kene sepetlele sa mine ka dilemo tse ngata ya ba mine ha o so bona hore ke na le silicosis ya ba ha o nhlalosetse ke tlo tseba hore ke na le silicosis ha re ngodisetsa Tshiamiso dingaka tsene di romeletse mona ile ya hlalosa ngaka eno hore o na le TB o na le silicosis ke khopile jwalo ka boemo bona ka mora le motsepedi re tsamaye re hlahloba ke entse jwalo ke ile sankatana ba fitla ba e netefatsa hore sile ke na le silicosis ke e ntse le teng ka bukana ka mona ntse go jwalo ke buetse ka mora nako eo ka mora nako ya le motsepedi ke khutletse sankatana ya ba ya ntshetsa certificate se ba itseng ke se romelle ka mona ka Tshiamiso ke se romeletse ka mona ka Tshiamiso kopi ya teng ntse le teng onna mo karete ena e khubedu ena e ke tshwereng e re ha ho letho le ka hlahang ka o Tshiamiso la matshidiso nka ka fumanang fela silicosis teng ho nna mmeleng TB teng ho nna mmeleng ke ntse ke tsama treatment le hona jwale TB e senkile ho yona ke ya boraro e ntseng e pepile hodima silicosis.
For many ex-miners, the cost of medical examinations alone can end their compensation hopes. A prerequisite to pay for your own benefit medical examination if you are repeating the process and believing the silicosis has progressed in your lungs than when you were last tested denies many Basotho ex-miners like Tshiamiso access to compensation from the Tshiamiso Trust. The mining legacy meets a failing health system and the miners lose twice. When the ex-miners die, Their widows carry the burden, traveling long distances, submitting documents, only to be rejected again and again.
6 January 2006 ka qeta wa wana lena ka November speedily ke tla hae ka di 6 tla hlokahala speedily nakong eno no ho nona le doctor no thuki ntate Motshwana na santse ba holo ba ne ke dutse ke hangata o ne amponse x-ray ya moleka x-ray ena ya hae ke kala lo tseba ho bona x-ray ya tsanta ka isampontse mona matshwafo mona ho nona le di dot tse tjena tate ampolella ho ntwe na ha le tjena na motho na o foreteile matshwafo so setse molekanyana fela a ke yona x-ray tuna he nna mosoka o itse wa pa sine empa he ya go tla masong a bona ka yo ka le nna ya ka ke sa itse le speedile ba ba re fetso
o na bipetsa mosebetsi wa hae ha ana ya ngake e ne le ho bolokenwa motjhining ke hopola ka tsatsi le leng a fihla ho thwe motjhini ha o sebetse tsepong bana ba mofuka ba patala 1.5 di today ho rampa a fumane motjhini ba bona hore ntate wa bona a ke keng a robala kapa a ke keng a phela a sa fumana motjhini bane o na sa hlolwa ho hema ho so sebetsa hore ha re bona hore o bipetsa na holo re mokuke re mo ise tsepong ba mo ise motjhining jwale ha ke re ine se e qetile matshwafo a nthe go lelela mai ne se le qetile matshwafo ana postmortem re ke pulmonary silicosis.
Many of these widows carry death certificates of their husbands that describe natural causes as the cause of their deaths, even when TB or silicosis was known, blocking their access to compensation from the Tshiamiso Trust. The Tshiamiso Trust was created after a historic class action lawsuit ended in an out-of-court settlement. A no-fault settlement agreement by 6 mining companies is meant to bring justice and soothe wounds. Its CEO, Dr. Munyatsiwa Kwinda, says the rules are strict for a reason.
It is important for me to mention that specifically in Lesotho, we have had almost 54,000 lodgements, of which 32,000 has been processed to date, although only 9,300 has been paid. And we all know that it is because of the prescripts of the trust deed that specifies who will need to be compensated in terms of the medical eligibility criteria. Meaning that does not mean that if somebody meets the minimum criteria of having worked in the qualifying mines during the qualifying period and also having performed risk work does not automatically means they are eligible for compensation. The fact that somebody has got a diagnosis of either silicosis or TB does not necessarily mean that they will be compensated, because there is an aspect of causation that is looked at from a cardiorespiratory assessment.
Critics say the process is too rigid, a view held by ex-miners champion Rantsho Mantsi. But Tshiamiso Trust argues it must protect the integrity of the settlement. Between those two realities lies the suffering of thousands of Basotho families.
Tshiamiso ile a iphatlalatsa mona hlenda tenta o dono ntso le temo lo sa phutile ka le re bolela gore tshebeletso ya naga ona o patala hana ke se hla e patadisa mola e sa ya radio ya bua ka announcement ya bona e se tlo patadisa bana ileng re se ke ba ka tswa hona di ditokomane tse ngata ampe tse ba bontsha hore their services are free ke ko bane molao wa naga eo ya Afrika Borwa o re dilemo tse ding tse pedi mosebetsi wa mmaene a e tlhatlhobo ya ntho bitswang benefit medical examination ke molao wa naga eno ya Afrika Borwa mo motho na sebetseng teng. Mme Tshiamiso le yona yolo ka custodian ya mono na hee e tlamea o sala morao melao ya naga hee.
The mining companies involved maintain that they have complied fully with the settlement and created the trust to operate independently. Catherine Bester, a head of communications consultants for the Gold Working Group, which represents the 6 companies, in a response to questions by the MNN, defended the Tshiamiso Trust record. She said the companies have honored the settlement agreement. She adds that the Tshiamiso Trust runs independently to ensure fairness and accuracy. She says they remain committed to supporting miners through the structures that were agreed in the trust deed settlement. Bester further said the trust is fulfilling its mandate as effectively as possible within the framework and requirements set out in the trust deed. She added that 23,943 payments have been made to eligible claimants, including 9,469 to Lesotho. But for the men dying in Lesotho's villages, this sounds like a distant corporate language, one that does not match the lived realities on the ground. According to the World Health Organization's data, Lesotho faces one of the highest TB burdens in the world. MNN spoke with Dr. Lang Mama, who leads the National TB Program. Dr. Mama sees the crisis every day, and this is what she had to say.
As per WHO report of 2024, Lesotho was standing at 664 per 100,000 population of TB. That is, in a population of 2.4, the estimates that year were around 2.4. That in each 100,000 population, in a year, you are going to get 664 TB patients. Among the TB patients in Lesotho, we are now at 49% of our TB patients who are also HIV positive. That 664 translates into 15,000 TB patients in 2024. However, according to our data, we were only able to notify at least 42% of that, which is something like 6,660. It is a very concerning, we call it treatment coverage.
Undiagnosed cases continue spreading tuberculosis, and the health system, already strained, cannot catch up. Another ex-miner, Sebota Motseki, describes the gold mines not as workplaces, but as slow execution chambers.
ke siki ena le go lela mokodi mme ntho engwe e bitswa small ene le wena ha o kena ka mono tla utlwa gore le go lelena ha le kena wena monko o no ntho engwe e tle o mobe jwale o tsamayang le go lelane la majwane a tshileng jwale le go leleno ha le fitla maswafong mo go ba wa le hema ha le fitla maswafong mona le ya hlaba go ba ke maju a kena maswafong mona ya gogamela ntho eno ke mona mo ketellong ya letsatsi o tla utlwa sotho ha o kena x-ray man a
reality of many TB patients in Lesotho is that they face another killer, hunger.
Nutrition in itself, it helps us to prevent diseases, any kind of disease. But now when I talk to TB, when you are not well nourished, you become more vulnerable to this infection. When you have TB and you are malnourished, your response to the treatment also is affected. Sometimes it's not even nutrition per se, but it is just pure hunger, lack of food. So that is also a challenge, this hunger. So much that even those whom we are able to find with TB, some fail to adhere to treatment because they don't have enough food to be able to take the food alongside their medication.
Currently, with tight budgets, only multi-drug resistant TB or MDR TB patients reliably receive nutritional support, leaving thousands struggling through treatment on empty stomachs.
Lesotho being landlocked in South Africa. Culturally, in the past, our fathers, when they were at the age of putting the bread on the table, they had to migrate to South Africa to work in the mines of South Africa. We are highly burdened with TB because most of our patients are people who worked in the mines of South Africa. We have partnered with Partners in Health. We have also roped in Solidamed. Those are our strategic partners that are helping us to end TB. And we have allocated them some districts to look after. And the feedback that we are getting on the ground is that they are doing quite well.
Honorable Makhalanyani also warns that losing Millennium Challenge funding weakened staffing and diagnostic capacity across Lesotho.
It was very clinical. We are approaching TB as clinical. But since there's been some transition, looking at TB and TB determinants is different. They become social determinants, more impacting how we fight TB more than before. The issue of poverty, if you look at that, you look at the unemployment in Lesotho, and then you look at the issue of poverty. And when you look at the issue of poverty in Lesotho, there's urban poverty, which is around 30% or so, and then 39%, and then also rural poverty, which is around 60%. right now if you look at the statistics. So the impact is huge because of the poverty trends, and then also looking at the clinical care skills base of the Ministry of Health. You find that at the clinic, that's why sometimes you get to the clinic where you only have a nurse assistant. You don't even have a registered nurse. You don't have a doctor. And then you look at the ratio of the doctor to the population, which is way very low than any other place.
The story of mining and the story of tuberculosis are not separate. They feed each other. Silica dust inhaled underground, disease untreated at home, lives shortened in silence. The voices you have heard all speak to one truth. A nation is suffocating under the weight of its past and under the failures of its present. Until the system changes, until clinics work, until compensation is fair, until miners' sacrifices are truly honored, Basotho will keep dying of diseases they did not choose. This has been Dust, Disease and Despair, produced by journalists Bilin Daude and Tshiamiso Trust from the eminent Center for Investigative Journalism in Lesotho with the Pulitzer Center's support.